reunification, ancestral revival. That's a new vibration. We're bringing back the best from the past. But in the future, man, we can make it last. Put it on your iPhone, you can stream it, turn it into a reel. You ain't gotta go for green only. Profit ain't the way unless you got a prophecy, then you got something to say, cause we're bringing back ancestral revival. We're bringing back all the best, not just survival. We came to thrive, we came to feel the vibe, we came to have masculine and feminine in one side. Unity in the tribe. Peace for my brothers and sisters, the little ones, they're gonna teach us so much. We need to clear the trauma, it's a lot. But that's cool, cause we got all the tools. DNA code, dude, it told you what to do. If you would just listen, get off your high horse and soapbox, maybe begin to see that the anomaly is that the progress for progress' sake is whack.
Ooh,
hey.
We're bringing back the old and making it brand new. So if you're jumping on board with us, we gon' get to that new history soon. Bringing back the old, we're gonna make it all brand new. And if you like what you're hearing, then just keep on listening, cause we're gonna write this story real new, yeah.
Welcome to the Alive and Aligned podcast, a show dedicated to helping you live a life of truth and share your fullest gifts with the world. I'm your host, Pete Byrne, and I'm here to open your mind to new perspectives, to introduce you to some epic humans who are already out there living their deepest truth. So now just grounding in, taking a breath, letting go of anything you're still holding onto from today, and just opening up to receiving this episode now. Let's dive on in. What is the secret to thriving in all areas of life? In our modern day, technology addicted, machine worshipping society, we are more depressed and sick than ever. And yet, as the collective turns to AI for the answers and keeps giving away their power to the powers that be, a new hypothesis is emerging. This concept that all the secrets to the fulfilled, joyful, happy, healthy life actually lie right there, woven into the tales of our history and our heritage and encoded deep in our DNA. I'm bringing forth this wisdom on the podcast today. Ancestral wisdom is Mr. Kevin Orosz. Kevin is a high-performance coach, a workshop and retreat facilitator, and a podcast host. He's a performance philosopher, a spoken word poet, a public speaker, a freestyle MC, as we will hear on this podcast, and the founder and CMO of lifestyle brand Misfit. Now, when we hear information that we know on a deep level to be fundamentally true, it resonates with every level of our being. And in this podcast, Kevin shares some of these principles of ancestral wisdom, which I believe create that same experience, that deep feeling of knowing of like, this is the way, you know? These are truths that have survived many, many thousands of years and have really helped our species get to where we are in this modern day. It's almost like the fundamentals of evolution in some way. So in the podcast, we dive into some really spicy topics, and we talk about how Kevin went from a very conservative Christian upbringing to now being a dating and polarity coach for people in romantic relationships. We talk about the qualities of the new alpha male. So how does a new alpha differ from society's toxic view of men, and also the views of more controversial people like Andrew Tate and how he sees masculinity. We talk about the issues with modern day men and women and go into a bit of a blueprint that you can follow if you want to find the highest alignment in your purpose, your relationships, and your health, whether you're a man or a woman. We got it all covered in there. We talk about the 3 topics that Kevin has gotten the most hate for online and why he continues to put himself in the firing line in favor of speaking truth. We top up this episode with, like, seriously, like one of the most epic freestyle music production things that I've ever been a part of. So make sure you listen right to the end of this episode, particularly for this freestyle rap and music section that sums all of the lessons that we dive into throughout up. Really excited to share this one with you guys. Let's dive on in. Mr. Kevin Orosz, welcome to the Alive and Aligned podcast.
Great to be here, Pete.
Yeah, how you feeling?
Feeling really good. And a nice little warm up in here. I'm excited.
What were you warming up on?
Just shooting the shit, rapping a bit. had a good drop in yesterday too. So
We did. Usually I would prepare like a list of like specific questions if someone had a niche that, yeah, like would require some specificity, if that's the word. And I feel like we can just really just flow with this and see where it goes, because I feel like you've got a lot of insight in many different areas, like specific niches or topics, but all maybe tied together by this greater truth that we might have, which is the philosophical element as well. So I'm excited to see where we go. It's going to be a wild ride.
yeah, stoked.
What is your favorite dish to eat for dinner?
Love where this is going. I mean, as a kid, I just would abuse it, and even to this day, I still love it. It's like a really good homemade fettuccine alfredo with like homemade pasta and like, you know, proper grass-fed beef in it, or like really good chicken. I just love Italian food. I've never been to Italy, but when I go, I'll probably go ape shit.
Nice. Do you have any Italian heritage?
No. I'm Hungarian, Czech, Scottish, and English.
Cool.
And a bit of French.
It's a good mix. It's a good balance. So yeah, I'm really excited. Like, the intention of this podcast, I suppose, is to really feel into and understand the why behind whatever guest tends to appear, like the why behind why they're doing what they're doing, and what is the common thread that weaves through all the different areas of their life, and how can we communicate that to an audience in a way that allows them to find that unique thread in themselves. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in as, you know, to kind of set the tone for everything we talk about. So
yeah,
part of that, finding that thread, is usually figuring out like how we ended up in this present moment today in a nice well-lit studio in Bali, Indonesia. So for you, what would you say were the 3 most defining moments on your journey to finding like the awakening journey, or the journey into stepping into like this more consciouspreneur life?
Yeah, great question. Love the frame. I mean, they all involve like big leaps of faith. The first one was leaving my home state and hometown in Texas. So I went to University of Texas in Austin, was studying psychology and philosophy, was pretty fixed on doing my PhD, and was kind of like, you know, working a job and going to school, doing the thing. Had a huge breakup and just a falling out with the community there, and felt very like limited and stuck, and just kind of, that was a big aha, was like, all right, fuck it. Like the goals and people I'm surrounding myself with and aiming at, even if I achieved them or stayed with them, I wasn't happy. Yeah. So it's like, if I just had more of this, I'm not going to be more fulfilled. And so just like, that was a big aha. So I moved to California, I moved to the Bay Area. And then it happened again. I was in California going to Burning Man, in the poetry scene, yoga, you know, music shows. I was loving it up. And then it happened again, where I was still applying to grad school. I thought for sure I was going to be like an academic. And the same thing, it was just like a better, shinier version in California. And I was like, all right, fuck all this. And then I just sold everything and bought a one-way ticket to Thailand.
Wow.
And spent the next like year backpacking through Southeast Asia, India, Nepal. And then the third aha was definitely like speaking on stage for the first time. So I was really blessed to have a good buddy that I had met in California who worked for Bulletproof, if you know the coffee, the classic butter oil coffee. And so I worked for them. That was like my last real job as a contractor. I was doing sales and marketing and events for them, which was just amazing, as I got to be in rooms with Tony Robbins and Joe Polish and the founder, Dave Asprey, and just was like on this fast track of like, holy shit. And through that, started a retreat company. Through that, started teaching workshops, coaching, doing retreats. And, you know, the first few times I spoke on stage or facilitated to like 500 people, it was like lights turned on. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. You know, I never would have thought of that or designed that. Like if someone had told me years before, like, all right, pick what you're going to do, you know, that would not be on my, even in my top 5.
Yeah.
But life has other plans.
There's something undeniable about like finding oneself in a situation and just feeling that deeper thing of like, oh, this is it. You know, if I do this, it's not only easeful, but enjoyable, and things seem to like come my way when I'm doing it. And maybe if I tried to do the other things I cognitively feel or think like I should be doing, it doesn't really flow, and yet this is just happening so easily. It's almost annoying.
Right. Right. I always say synchronicity or like, coincidence, I don't think is real. It's not random. It's a KPI. It's a key performance indicator.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean everything has to be, you can take it too far, but there's key moments in life. There's turning points. There's people you meet. There's events. There's being in the right place at the right time. It's a real thing. The Irish are very aware of this with this idea of luck or like, kismet.
Lucky charms.
And, they're one of the cultures that I think gets that rap, but it's actually true for all of humanity.
Sure.
And everyone, you can tap into that.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because like my perception of like being Irish, or at least growing up in Ireland, was I suppose like many people who grow up in a very standard, civilization society these days, where it's like you're born, you go to school, you get a job kind of thing. And it, at least growing up in that, feels like very much the same rendition of what other people in those communities might have experienced as well. So it's funny that like that would be like, I love the idea of Irish like as a culture really believing in that. And it's been funny that I almost enjoy more. It's almost like I feel like Americans maybe have this idea of Irish people like these are really, hey, like we're all dancing all the time or something. It's actually quite, my experience is kind of bland at the best of times, But there's something about connecting back to also like folklore and tradition. And even I studied I wouldn't say maybe anymore, I was fluent in Gaelic.
Amazing.
So I went through the university, studied there, and realized it was pretty much like only people who want to become secondary school teachers and people who wanted to study Ogham stones from the 1700s, like these old tombstones. And I'm just like, okay, this is a bit irrelevant. But I love that idea of bringing in, culture and tradition and the deeper messages. Like we could go down the path of religion and the deeper messages in that maybe gets bastardized today. But specifically from you and your culture, be it American or your more ancestral culture, what have been some of the lessons that maybe you've been able to tap back into the archetypes of your heritage that have been things that have influenced you or good lessons you've had?
Yeah, the reason I do love the Irish culture is because, my mom's side's a lot from, Scotland, Ireland, England.
Yeah.
I haven't actually gone through the full family tree, but there's some drama apparently on that side because at some point, the family line breaks in the documents that my mom's family had because they robbed the crown. So they were advisors or in the court and they actually stole or something happened. So which I thought was kind of cool.
Fuck the system kind of thing.
Fuck these royals who are just, and that's the Scottish Irish way, It's the Romans came and fucking decimated the Druidic culture, which I love very much. And those people, the Gauls, the Celts, these Germanic tribes and the English tribes, or not English, but those islands, and they got colonized. They brought in Catholicism and then the church, and obviously the Crown of England did its number and did the whole thing. So yeah, I love that stuff. Honestly, the culture I resonate with most and have had my full circle with denying it and being fuck the South, fuck Texas, I'm going to California, I'm going to be an enlightened liberal.
Yeah.
And now I'm all the way back of oh wow, this is actually, I'm so grateful that I'm Texan and was born in Texas, because Texas has a very strong honor code, libertarian ethic around work, finance, relationships, and is a hub for entrepreneurs and, driven people who really want to make a change and make money doing it and aren't ashamed and are grounded and, they enjoy hunting and they enjoy sport and, blistering summers.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. And I'm grateful to be moving back to Austin and planting my flag there.
Super exciting. And, from that we talked about that, the old way of doing things, and even spoke about in, let's say somewhere like Texas, where you've got this more honor code and these traditional values, and starting to stem slowly into the work that you're more specifically niching into the moment in terms of your coaching is around dating, relationships, and polarity, and something you were mentioning before, receiving some flack about online for being one of the maybe spokesperson or pillars for this traditional way of showing up in a relationship and how to build it and cultivate a thriving relationship as a man or as a woman, but specifically I'll be from a male's perspective. So what have been some of the biggest lessons or the biggest insights or realizations you've had that you've been able to apply to your life and your relationship or relationships around that topic, around the, we'll say, the more masculine provider role or chivalrous thing? And me even saying that might bring up shit for people, but let's go there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the reason I even got into studying relationships and being fascinated by it was because how royally I had fucked up, early on. Went full celibate, was in the Catholic mindset of sex is evil, you'll go to hell, for expressing a natural bodily function that literally sustains the species. I mean, in retrospect, it's insane, but it's real. And sexuality has been tabooed and weaponized by religions for all time, because if you can channel that energy, you're
powerful as fuck.
Really create a strong system of control. Yeah. And that exists to present day. So yeah, through that process, through being betrayed by a girlfriend, through being, really inept in dating and just completely naive in many ways, I kind of went through the school of hard knocks, simultaneously studying this, and was one of the things I wanted to do my PhD in, had I done it, was evolutionary psychology and mating, dating dynamics, both in primates and in humans, and pulling in a lot of that data. For me, it's very simple when you look through that lens. From an ancestral perspective, men and women are not at odds with each other, and they're not, kind of fluidic and, we don't really know where one ends and one begins. No, they're actually pretty crystal clear as survival roles, and a symbiotic pair that literally creates more humans and deals with the frankly fucking gnarly reality of history, which first was like nature and saber-toothed tigers and fucking, the Ice Age. We had to survive. And then the warring tribes, economic diasporas, history, which is history as a bloodbath. And men and women have survived all of that, and not only survived, but thrived. And there's certain qualities like masculine providence, protection, masculine vision and leadership, the ability for feminine nurture, and the feminine's ability to be an oracle or very emotional, psychosocial kind of savant. Also the feminine's ability to feel big emotions and be an erotic conduit of energy, not only to give birth, but to, bring Shakti, bring life force into the man's life and into the village. And this has always been the case. And all indigenous tribes have this pretty clear, and they talk about it. There is a twin-spirited being or a third non-binary, at least that. Sometimes there's 4 or 5, like in the Hawaiian culture. There are other genders, and they've been recognized for thousands of years. They're very rare, though, and they're usually occupying a niche role as either a shamanic class or a very healing class, because they can walk in both worlds. It's not like we're seeing today, which, I don't pass a judgment on it. Like, if people want to do this, like, fucking go nuts. I ultimately believe in free will. Like, I don't care what you do. The problem is when you start telling me what I should do or what my family should do. It's like, okay, like, now you've crossed the line. I don't believe that, multiple gender switching and like having reassignment surgery and, the stuff that's happening now and being
particularly
promoted
at an early age as well.
Oh yeah. I think it's criminal, at least. And at most, it's a very sickening, to think that there's people that want this as an agenda is like, just makes my stomach turn.
Well, you spoke to sexuality being weaponized by, religion for, hundreds, thousands of years, even maybe. But it's just a different flavor of the same coin. It's like, instead of like, let's bury it, and make it like you're going to go to hell. Like, let's make it that you can do whatever you want. And it almost pushes it to the opposite end of the spectrum, into the shadow, And this kind of is almost like, like I believe it's like a knowledge, like if you neuter a man, make him feel wrong for being a man, and have a society set up and a structure that's going to make him feel shame for that, then those things that, like, he's going to naturally push into the shadow all the, of course, negative qualities which could come from being a man that, get publicized, but also all the positive qualities. Like, if I'm a nice guy, then the thought of setting a boundary feels scary or feels wrong. So, how much power do I have then from that respect, And the same with women, pushing women into this more hyper, almost masculine role, where then it's going to be this like cut off from true nature and probably leaning to some kind of burnout or, even disease maybe over time, where there's just like living out of alignment, out of that true nature that we spoke about at the start. Is like when whether it's purpose or just natural who one was born to embody, then if we're not to say that there are some men that could live in a more feminine way if that's what they're supposed to do, but if someone's denying the true essence, I think it's going to create disparity over time, challenge over time.
Totally. I mean, it depends on what level you want to approach it, but there's some systemic, what some people would call conspiracy theory level stuff, which has been around for a while. Like, if you weaken men or just conscript them to be soldiers and have them basically become automatons and killing machines and then reinsert them into the workforce, you can kind of do whatever you want as a ruling class. Mm-hmm. And this has been well understood. I mean, it's not even hidden. You can read documents from royals and even in the Federalist Papers in the founding of America, which is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Yeah. It clearly says, if we create factions and keep them at war with each other, we can do whatever we want economically. It just says it in fine print. It just says it. It's not hidden. So there's that angle where, like, if you weaken men and you want to roll out tyrannical policy, similar to Braveheart and things like that, you know, the men, if they're strong, high testosterone, free, they're gonna be like, "Yo, fuck you. We're not having this." Yeah. And obviously now it's mainly psychological warfare. There's not a lot of physical warfare now. Now on another level, Malcolm X pointed this out. A lot of the leaders in the '60s in America and around the world, even in Britain and Germany, pointed out that if you traumatize women and essentially take them out of the mothering role in a healthy way, that it traumatizes the children as well. Mm-hmm. And this is a very efficient way to take out a society. And, that's a whole rabbit hole right there. But essentially, let's just get to the practicals. What's missing is rites of passage for men. Yes. So a man is made, not born. Like there's men walking around in 60-year-old bodies with billions of assets at hand and, nuclear missiles. And they're kind of emotionally like a 14-year-old.
If they're lucky.
If that, right? And so that's not great. Like we need psychologically mature men that know how to wield violence in defense of what's good in their loved ones, and also know how to compromise and actually defer to other men, cooperate. You can still be a badass, and competition's good up to a level, but the world situation is such because we basically have a giant pissing match with immature masculine egos. And women have been suppressed and taken out of the picture. A good brother here was actually sharing, and I forgot about this, the Iroquois, which is a Native American tribe in America. The war leaders were men and the hunters, like chieftains. But the decision-making group was a council of 13 grandmas. So they had to declare war and actually decide what happens, and then the men would execute it. And that's just like one example of an elegant kind of egalitarian symbiotic ruling structure or governance model where the masculine and feminine are included. Right now, we have only the masculine essentially ruling, although that's changing. And then in the masculine, only the tyrant archetype, which is the younger, immature masculine, which is like, you do what I say, and I get all the things, and if you don't like that, then fuck you. It's not what we want to see on face value. No matter how you cut it, whatever political leaning you have, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's basically the bigger the leader is, the bigger the daddy wound he has. Sure. To a degree, or the need to prove self-worth and maintain that through control and repression of others.
I mean, Hitler is the kind of penultimate example. He wanted to be an artist. Yeah. His parents shit on him. Yeah. His father did not respect him and appreciate him. Yeah. And, a hurt little boy, there's an African proverb. It's like, if the boy isn't brought into love in the village, it can sit by the fire and be accepted. He'll burn down the village just to feel its warmth. And this is what happens. And why violent crime and addiction and suicide are 9-10x the levels in men versus women. It's because of this.
Yeah. Super powerful. And it's funny because for me, and I'm sure yourself as well, in working with one-on-one or even group, we see these, shadows and these different repressed emotions, shame, guilt and stuff coming to the surface, and these hand-me-down patterns that go from generation to generation. It's almost like they stack on top of each other. He got it from his dad, he got it from his dad. And, I really see that on a case by case, ground level basis and, working one-on-one, but we really are talking about that en masse. So when we talk about that as a structure, that things are set up, basically you've got the masses in a codependent relationship with a few people up top, who are in this kind of leader role. And they're like, wow, you're my, you're like a demigod.
Basically. You're my daddy.
Yeah, pretty
Basically.
much. Yeah, pretty much. Like, I have no power. Here's my power, basically, indirectly. Apart from like on a case by case, on the ground, working with people like on a one-on-one basis to shift, heal, move through, and embody something else from these old patterns, what is a way that as stepping into like leaders for a new way of looking at the structure of society, how can that begin to happen on a bigger scale where there can be a more rapid shifting of these old structures and old patterns, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I think we all are. As Buckminster Fuller said, the secret of change is not to tear down and fight the old, it's to build the new to a level it outmodes it and actually outcompetes it, makes it obsolete.
Yes.
That is the key. There's a lot of people, and I know some of these people. I love them. I love their passion, bless their life, who want to be activists, who want to rise into positions of power in local, federal governments and change it from within. Historically, that's never worked.
Yeah.
You could argue that big leaps have made, and sure, civil rights movement, women getting the right to vote, sexual liberation, a lot of progress has been made. I don't want to dock it. However, we're at a point now where, Putin or one of these characters could get drunk, could get pissed, and just launch a nuclear strike.
Sure.
Or, I think that's I think they're smart. Like, they got to give them credit. They're fucking really smart.
Totally.
They're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because it fucks up their assets. It's much more likely, and I think it's already happening, economic warfare. It's like, hey, what if we crash this economy? What if we take down that crypto exchange? What if we fuck up these bonds and derivatives? And this is happening all the time. Now it's ramping up because we're in a global recession right now. It's going to get worse, I believe. A lot of shit like that's happening. What we need are new systems, new models, new forms of governance that reinvigorate the idea of the commons and the village. We need consensus, which is really hard to get, from actual people with common goals and some level of emotional maturity and communication skill that doesn't devolve into factions and tribalism immediately.
Yes.
Right? And that's not easy. It requires self-mastery, it requires individual sovereignty, it requires...
Lots of ayahuasca retreats.
potentially. And it also requires, the most painful part is taking the red pill, opting out of the broken systems.
Yeah.
And I'm not free of them. I still have a bank account. I still, have all these institutions that I'm leaning on, especially in big tech, to run my business and so on. But I'm also willing and experimenting, for example, in the blockchain space, to, as soon as a new system is somewhat viable and we need, the pioneers to get in there, like, put me in, coach. Like, I'm ready to demonstrate, fuck around in new models. And I think we need to aggressively do that. We need to aggressively innovate and move towards the edges. We don't need to go recidivist and conservative and be like, let's just double down on the same old stuff that worked for dad and granddad. Because it's frankly getting to a crescendo where it's a death sentence.
Yeah, totally. It's like we vote in that new leader, or we do another strike. That'll do it. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it needs to change the game, change the dimension.
Yeah.
In terms of that, right? This is an interesting one, Kay. In terms of putting together a conglomerate of leaders, of people who can make those decisions from an emotionally regulated or mature place, how can one propose that someone gets to that position, or a series of people get to those positions, without coming across to those others as like they're saying like, well, these people are like better than you because they've done this deeper emotional work and they are able to like handle their stuff, basically?
Yeah. I mean, there's this idea in a lot of the intellectual deep web, dark web folks, people like Daniel Schmachtenberger, Jordan Hall, like some really awesome characters, of game A versus game B. And this comes from game theory, also economic theory.
Yes.
Game A is zero sum, so winner takes all.
Yeah.
You can win at any cost. If you win, you accrue the women, the resources, the gold, whatever.
Yeah.
Game B is positive sum, so there can be multiple winners. Instead of cutting up the pie and stealing from the future and each other, you make the pie bigger. You actually work on more of an abundance mindset instead of scarcity. Pretty simple stuff on paper, really hard to implement
When survival emotions kick in.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And when the existing models and structures, which are monolithic, have a lot of momentum, and we got to give them their due. They built the world to this point. I mean, look at our technological level. It's amazing. Yeah. And I'm grateful. I'm using it. I'm leveraging it. Meanwhile, emotionally incorporating masculine, feminine dynamics, incorporating care of children and raising them up with wisdom and care of our elders. It's completely missed the mark.
Yes.
And what we'll need is enough leaders, and there's people dabbling, like even old Elon. You can say what you want about Musk. He's sprinkling some game B ideas with censorship resistance and how he's investing and funding things. You know, I don't know his heart. I don't know his intentions at the deepest level, but I'm looking at his actions, and he's one step above the normal clowns that are running most of these governments and parliaments.
Sure.
So we need game B leaders to step up. You know, we can do it from the grassroots, and we are. People like us creating, speaking, building business, making people laugh, bringing in value. Yeah. That will continue. We do need people that already have billions in assets, that already rule vast swaths of industry, of politics, to take a chance and be like, you know what? I'm not going to do the things the way the good old boys have always done it. I'm going to make a change and start to model game B concepts. And what will happen is there will be a critical mass where, and we need marketing too. We need it to be cool. It can't be this corny utopian idea, because then it's just this socialism.
Yeah,
it's
or
not.
Get labeled as hippies or something.
Right, right. It needs to be weaponized and sharp, but it will out-compete it.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing, is like, even in biology, from a pure systems level and evolution, you know, Darwin wrote about the world of tooth and claw, like animals are just all eating and killing each other, which is true on one level, but like the lion doesn't wipe out the gazelle, it's symbiotic. Because if the gazelle get too strong, they destroy the ecosystem because they eat all the grass. It can't germinate new. You know, there's a very delicate dance. It's actually much more cooperative and diplomatic, even though death and victory and loss is involved. That's what we have to model. We need to actually move towards biomimicry in our monetary system, in our living system, in our food and healthcare system.
And something that you're really, I know, passionate about is like the promise of crypto, you know, and beyond just like sending Dogecoin to the moon. What are some of the ways that you see like cryptocurrency coming in as a way to facilitate that game B?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the hottest areas where there actually is big experiments happening. I'm not sure about crypto. I mean, I'm bullish personally on crypto. I'm bullish the most on blockchain itself, which is the tech that cryptocurrencies or coins are built on.
Sure.
Blockchain ledger, the most simple terms, is just a way to keep account.
Yeah.
And it's a way to do it that it can't be changed. So it's immutable. It's transparent. So, you know, I can't, if I wanted to look at your bank account, you know, your BCA account here in Indonesia, I can't do that. I can't be like, hey, can I check out Pete's transaction history? They're like, what are you talking about? In blockchain, you can do that, which is actually pretty awesome. Yeah. Because it prevents a lot of bad faith actors.
Sure.
In theory, in practice, it's full of grifters and tyrants that are robbing
there's
people.
Like anything, there's a light and a dark side. So if you wanted to monitor all my transactions for control purposes, then of course that too. So it can definitely be.
But if we wanted to track campaign financing and, you know, NGOs and where is the money actually going? Yeah. Now we can see it. Awesome.
The Bahamas, yeah.
Right. And this is one of the big broken things with the double entry ledger system, which is ancient, you know, the Medici Bank in Renaissance times. Yeah. The way banking is set up is medieval. Yeah. Period. And so blockchain represents a massive burst of innovation, and it brings a lot of promises. Also, more importantly, blockchain democratizes in a real sense the exchange of value, and even things like NFTs and artwork, property ownership. We can do deeds, real estate. We can do marriage license. We can do corporate contracts. We can do digital and in-person real estate. All of these things are going to break up one of the biggest industries that exists right now, which is the middleman. Hey, I can set you up with that producer. Oh, I can actually show your art in my museum for a fee. And that is one of the most predatory things that has suppressed creativity, which blockchain, in some sense, promises to unleash. Now, we're still in the infancy. It's still early. I'm bullish long-term. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. I mean, there's these billboards in Austin. It's this genius marketing campaign where it's like, crypto is a peaceful revolution disguised as a get-rich-quick scheme or disguised as a casino. And It is a revolution because let's just face it, most of the world, billions in fact, live on less than $1 a day. Most people think about, including myself, I'm not free of this. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm hustling.
Yeah.
Most people just think about money. They think about how they're going to feed their kids, provide for their family, how they're going to pay for that date and impress the woman, how they're going to, buy the house, car, or split the bill.
We'll get to that.
So the money game has to be shifted. It's not working the way it is. It's completely built on debt. We need to actually shift value. It's not even about money. Money is the symbol for value. What does value actually represent? And humanity's at a level where we have to have this conversation as a species. And I think blockchain is the next innovation. I don't know if it's the final one, but it's the next innovation.
Yeah.
And anyone who sleeps on it, thinks it's only a scam, hasn't actually looked into it, at least a little bit, do so at your own risk.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like the old system is you've got this, as you said, old technology that they've stacked all this now fancy shiny stuff on top with your banking apps and all that stuff that you can do, but it's not fixing the fundamental issue, which is somewhat flawed. Again, it got us where we are today. And then at the same time, we're seeing, just like you mentioned, with let's say the creative and the music industry, we see breaking point nearly where it went from like, okay, yeah, the artist can get signed to a label, can make some good cash. And now it's like label has 360 deal on everything you earn and you get some Spotify plays if you're lucky kind of thing. Same with the money system. It's like now we'll just print more money and everyone's too focused on their own plate in front of them to even notice or worry. It's just too much for someone's capacity to even comprehend. So it's just like a void.
Yeah.
So I suppose this is something that's bringing it back down to earth, but from a foundational basis, a change.
Right. And presenting a new issue, which is the technological savvy you need to have to use it. Because you can custody your own coins and have your own wallet, you become your own bank. You become responsible for your funds. You can't trust Daddy Wells Fargo or Daddy Bank of America or Bank of England to just take care of your shit. You have
Should you be trusting them anyway is the question.
Right, exactly. The sovereignty piece is huge.
Yeah.
The fact that PayPal or the Canadian government can freeze your bank account based on political views. I mean, do we need to go back to the 1930s to talk about what happens when we go down that slope?
Yeah. At the moment, my Wise account has been frozen for 20 days because they're doing some kind of paperwork thing, and I submitted all the papers, and they're like, yeah, we got some regulation and we're backlogged, so it's 20 days before you can access your money. I'm like, great, well, I didn't need that anyway. So that's really kind of been a big wake-up call for me to be like, all right, like obviously diversification, but like across many forms of obviously asset and wealth that's liquid when needed, because like, wow, this is
right.
Quite annoying.
This is one of the very practical applications of Bitcoin, like things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tron. There's a few that are really good for this. If I want to wire you 20K in USD and you got a bank account in Ireland, well, if I send it on a Friday, it's not going to get there till probably Wednesday because business days don't count on the weekend. Oh, by the way, this is your money, but we need a $150 fee because we're going to do it's completely absurd.
Yeah. Plus our exchange rate, which is a bit
right. Plus the exchange rate,
yeah.
they take a little off the top there.
Yeah.
It's a vampiric system. So every step they charge you for things that, from a data perspective, moving numbers on a screen, moving an account in the ledger, takes 5 minutes. If it's a slow computer, if it was Bitcoin, I could send you 1 million in Bitcoin. It arrived to you in 15 minutes. And if you're on the Lightning Network or you do your shit right, your stuff. Costs $15, $5.
Yeah.
If the network is high, it's instant.
Yeah.
Some, like Matic or Tron could send it for like 5 cents or 1 cent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that alone, like that's how I think the masses will get onboarded. They'll just realize the absurdity and the practicalities of how they trust their money to banks. And yeah, I think this decade will be defined by blockchain technology in the tech space, in the financial space, and the creative space.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were to compare the current financial system and the promise of the future financial system with a metaphor of a relationship style, so what would like an old style of relating be, and how could that new promise look? How would you do it?
Yeah, I mean, the banking system right now is in a traumatic, codependent, like abuse relationship structure with like complete, like negative shadow aspects of domination and submission.
Yeah.
The new model would be much more, synergistic, interdependent, with some authentic relating thrown in, and maybe some kink and tantra, because there are some edges that we get to play with.
Sure. And using that as a nice pivot point. What have been the 3 biggest things, because we mentioned before, like you've been a bit of a pillar for some of the projections of certain groups, because of the nature of the work you do, which is around dating, relationships, polarity. So what have been the 3 biggest trigger topics, or things like statements you've made or concepts you've expressed that have received the biggest backlash?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've never seen so much vitriol and resentment thrown at me that I saw last year. I'm not, unused to it, because back when you could, I went organically viral on Facebook with a video called "Masculinity is Dead." And I was talking about the old paradigm of masculinity and kind of just shooting the shit on this live, and it went crazy. Almost got 1 million views,
wow.
Thousands and thousands of shares. And this has been a theme. Like, any time that I speak, and now I'm doing more like text. I'm not doing as much video. Those classic text memes, a little paragraph.
Yeah.
When I speak about men being attuned to the feminine, but still strong and firm in masculine leadership, people just go fucking psycho. A lot of them would, no judgment. If this is you, hey, I'll love you. As long as you respect me, I'm going to respect you. I will talk to you, even if you hate what I'm talking about, but you just come with respect. I'm a philosopher. Let's have a dialectic.
Totally. Change my mind.
Sure. I'm open. I want to hear it. I don't fucking know. I'm just working on the best I have.
Sure.
That being said, you come with disrespect immediately, and I don't even know you. It's like, what? Like, you wouldn't go on someone's lawn and just like take a shit or like break something and you don't even introduce yourself. It's like, that's absurd. Anyway, that's a big one. A lot of feminist types that are more the radical feminists, and also men that are really masquerading and white knighting and being like, I'm the good guy. This is patriarchy. Like, I get a lot of that. And that's just for saying the new alpha, that's a big trigger word, or the new strong masculine man, in my experience, is going to be attuned to the feminine, have emotional intelligence, but still be fucking rock solid with his finances, with his mission, with his training, with his brotherhood. And that, to me, is pretty fucking obvious. The silent majority is like, yep, 100%.
Yeah.
But then the minority, goes apeshit.
Sure. Well, we generally only hear about the ones that are like, have a problem,
Yeah.
So it's like, they're going to be the ones that speak out. And a lot of people just kind of nod and go, even if they wouldn't ever overtly admit it. I'd say particularly with something as potentially polarizing as that, pun intended, that, let's say for a man who maybe knows he's not living his full potential, to see or hear
Exactly.
that as a a North Star to work towards, but that also takes admitting that I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. It can be hard there can be, wounding, like there can be shame around that, like, oh, I'm not a real man, So of course I'm not going to go and speak up. For a woman who might have fear of being seen as like supporting something, I would imagine, again, I'm not a woman, so I don't know, but I would imagine if maybe there is, whether it's a conscious or non-conscious desire for something better or something more than has been had in the past, I'd imagine there would be a gravitation towards that, but maybe not an overt support until that person was sure that those around them wouldn't do the same thing that they're doing to you, which is basically projects stories from woke culture, the media, onto them. You instantly, like, by planting your stake in the ground, you become a target, which, someone's got to do it, but,
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it as long as, again, there's respect, there's some level of a modicum of, dialectic. I'm happy to be in the arena.
Yeah.
And also it's like, I've been in social media, I've been consistent for a while. I'm on the field. Like, if you're booing in the stands, it's like, I don't, like, it's savage, but I'm not going to get on the field.
Yeah.
Share your perspective, come fully direct. Then we can go eye to eye. But if you're in the stands booing and throwing popcorn, it's like, I don't have time for that. It's just, so it is what it is. Part of me takes it as a badge of honor. Part of me, I will admit, it has rocked me a few times.
Sure.
Because people I know from the past, people I respected, came really sideways and talk shit. And those hurt when it's people you know. When they're strangers, I mean, I'll block them on sight
Sure.
if it's really negative. But it's the people I guess I thought I knew. They're revealing some of their true colors, which is fine, but the way they went about it was pretty cringe. Anyway, back to the top 3. That's 1. 2 is definitely around provision. I've done all these polls. Looked at some of the research. I've supported a lot of men and women in group and single coaching.
Yes.
And it's got to be 95% of women are like, if he doesn't pay for the check in our activity, movie, dinner, whatever, the likelihood of a second date is nearing 0. And for most women, it's very low. And that's an experience that a lot of men and women have had. But that's very taboo because now it's all egalitarian and it's all split the bill, go Dutch.
Totally.
You know, I don't need a man to pay for me. There's the feminine side, which is like, I want to be the masculine provider. I want to do that, which is awesome. Go nuts. The problem becomes if you want to create a relationship with polarity, with a positive and negative pole, a masculine and feminine dynamic. There's this kind of myth that I used to buy into myself that you can just be completely fluid. Well, it changes moment to moment. And, sometimes I'll lead and then he'll lead. And then we'll just, anytime we want, it's in the bedroom or at dinner, we can just, I've never seen it. Maybe it exists. I'm not saying it doesn't. Never seen it.
Yeah.
It's just the fluidity and the amount of time it takes to switch into those roles and dynamics and energetic. It's all energetics. It's not tied to gender, by the way. So for folks listening, a lesbian couple or 2 men or 2 non-binary people are still going to manifest a masculine, feminine, energetic.
Totally.
And I've seen it. I've worked with trans people. I've worked with multiple LGBT people, and it's the same. Yeah. Sometimes even more clear because they're like, yes, this makes so much sense. They don't get caught up and don't label me and define me. It's actually the opposite of what you see on the media in my experience.
Yes. And so that was, what did we have? We had the first one was...
Yeah, just like strong, alpha leadership men are going to be attuned and dialed. Second is like, men providing are going to attract and keep the highest quality women. And the third one is definitely a woman who's able to surrender, and this word is the big trigger one, be submissive in a devotional, aligned, healthy way with a man, are going to experience the best sex, emotional connection, and become the best partners to men and the most desired. That one probably is the one that went the most apeshit. And I understand why. 1 in 3 women has been sexually assaulted or abused. And that's egregious that's a fucking fact. And, I have family members that have been abused. I have worked with a lot of these people. And so my heart goes out for how much trauma there is in the collective feminine around assertive, dominant men. And
acting from shadow,
right?
This wound that we spoke about earlier.
And sexuality, the most vulnerable, sacred thing, being abused in that is just, it's downright evil in the worst cases. That being said, the top feminine fantasy is being ravished and taken by a CEO, lawyer, doctor, pirate.
50 Shades of Grey.
Exactly.
Come on.
It's all based on
there.
dominance and submission and being taken by a strong masculine man. And that is the extreme case, obviously, but it is living in the unconscious of all these women.
Yes.
And I've watched women who are high-performing 6-7 figure corporate or entrepreneurs. I don't need no man, strong, independent woman. They meet a man who can actually hold them and be like in integrity and very masculine and dominant with them. And I see them again, lose track of them 6-12 months later. They look more feminine. They're pregnant. They're like, I didn't even want to run that business. I'm completely, not that they just become a stay-at-home mom. They still have side hustles and they're doing their thing, but visibly, healthfully, hormonally, have completely transformed. And, I've pointed this out many times, and this, again, triggers people who aren't experiencing that and have abusive ex-husbands or whatever, and are divorced. And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And that doesn't change the reality of that dynamic, which is actually the healthiest dynamic in which to raise children, in which to build a village, which is what this is really about.
Yeah, building a new village. So there's a part A and B to this next question. We might spend a few minutes on part A, but don't let me forget part B. The part A is, right, so someone like Andrew Tate gets a lot of support and occasionally obviously arrested as well, but like, a lot of what he represented, and I remember the first time I listened to his interview is with Patrick Bet-David, I think, where it was that 5-hour interview or something.
That one's great.
Yeah, it's a good one. Where he's less like, he's a bit more professional, you know? I remember listening to, so Andrew Tate, for anyone who doesn't know, is like, he went super viral. He had all these videos, very extreme, I would say, first stage masculine kind of, which is like masculine provider, but from a place of like full, like the man should do this. He's a protector, but he also, like what he gets most flack about is like men should be allowed to basically sleep with other women, whereas women shouldn't do that. It's disgusting. And it's a bit like, yeah, mate, come on. Like, you know, I don't know if that's going to work. So, but each to their own, you know. I still think it's being able to listen to someone like that and being able to draw on the core principles without taking it as like, I want to be copy of him. You know, I want to like do exactly what he does and live in his way, but being able to take what's true for me from what he's saying. Does that resonate? And I know for a lot of guys, even like male friends, male clients that I would have sent that interview to, listen and go, holy fuck, thank God, you know, this is what I've been looking for. And it's what you spoke to as well before, that deeper, like it's in the DNA. It's like that deeper feeling of like, yes, what I've been listening to and fed from all angles is fucking bullshit, you know, for a lot of these things of how a man should show up. And that said, it's not like, let's just clone Andrew Tate's everywhere. So with this new alpha, was that what you called it? Sure, new alpha, okay? So one thing you mentioned earlier was this capacity for emotional intelligence and being attuned to the feminine. So what are the qualities from this traditional style, you could even say Southern, you know, drawing from those roots, and the traditional masculine role combined with these newer elements, which is maybe it's the capacity to emotionally regulate or to have cleared out and be with trigger and shadow? Or what are these components that if we were to list out the qualities as a blueprint for maybe someone as a guy who's like, I want to be a better man, I want to be a better partner, a better father, a better brother, whatever it is, what could be some qualities that he could seek to embody?
Yeah, this is great. Quickly on Tate, you know, it's funny, it's come up in every single interview I've done since he came out, and rightly so. The dude is a marketing genius and just a fucking, you know, his dad was a chess master. That's why he called himself Top G. He's sharp, he's powerful. He completely misses the mark with attunement to the feminine. And like, you know, I think I've listened to a lot of his stuff, just like studying and trying to understand the phenomenon. And, you know, does he have a woman who's fully in his corner and who he loves and wants? No, like that's what he misses.
Yeah.
He's kind of on a war path. And he's playing out some egoic shit. And he's a beautiful medicine for the culture right now. That's why he's so powerful. People are like, he's a human trafficking chauvinist. It's like, okay, keep listening to Fox News and you know, seeing, well, I guess not Fox News. They're actually pro him. But anyway, the mainstream. Yeah. Meanwhile, you know, if you read his like principles for men and all that, like he gets a lot of it right. And there's a reason men are like, this is amazing. I've been starving for this. Yeah. It's real. Yeah. But he completely misses the emotional attunement, the feminine, you know, real symbiosis. And, you know, to your question, the core questions one of my mentors gave us to me are, you know, who am I? Deepest question you're going to be answering even as you give your last breath. Where am I going? Which is huge. A man has to have vision, a North Star. He has to have a mission. You can be a gardener, you can be a stay-at-home dad, you can be a clerk somewhere. Doesn't matter. If you go all in, you're going to gain a lot of masculine momentum. And the last one's who's coming with me. So it's like, who are my brothers? Who's my core community? Who's my woman? Who's my partner, my queen? These are the biggest questions a man has to really own and go all in on. And they kind of break down into, you know, masculine protection, providence, and legacy. These are like the core areas a man has to come to terms with. And, you know, protection isn't just physical, although, yeah, if someone breaks into your house, like, you want to push your wife? Like, hey, protect us. Like, it's just absurd. Everyone knows that. No woman, even a radical feminist, would support that. It's just obvious. The male body, the male physique is bred for hunting and, you know, physical power. That's good. We actually want to support that. Men should train and they should learn to fight and they should understand their ability as a man in a body. Providence is real. It's not just money, although money is sacred. Yeah. The reason that one's so taboo is because people have these money wounds like we're talking about. And that's real. I'm not past them. I still have my own shit. That's a real thing, though, being able to provide. Like, You can imagine, like, you know, in ancestral times, you have your cave woman and the family around the fire, like huddled up in the ice age, and the man comes home and he's like, I don't really feel like hunting. It's like, why don't you go hunt? You know, or let's split it. I'll kill. You know, it's like, it's fucking absurd.
Yeah.
Like, survival levels demanded that there was a masculine layer of providing, whether that was tilling the crops, hunting the animal, going to war, trading. There's many ways to express it. That's just one piece. Emotional provision, psychological provision, sexual provision, the ability to cover and create the structure in which the family and the feminine can fill with life and organize. This is the masculine superpower. Men are strategic geniuses. We're of the nature of logos. Logos is the divine spirit of, you know, organization and wisdom and like strategy and tactics. Women are of eros. You know, they're more of how to organize and fill and enliven the space, vivify it with energy, emotional intelligence, interpersonal connections, erotic and emotional waves of energy that give life and can also cut you down to size and get you back in line if your ego's out of control.
Kali style.
Exactly. And this is a perfect symbiosis. So men are going to have to be in that level. And then legacy is, you know, it's the mission. It's the dharma. What's your North Star? What are you here to do? If you don't do it, you will suffer.
Yeah.
And then those men become abusive and spiteful. And that's what, you know, Me Too and all these big movements are attacking, is that kind of masculinity, which is very much in the shadow. It's very wounded.
Yeah.
Not all of its own accord. Society, generations of fathers, the missing of rites of passage, masculine initiation falling by the wayside. You know, Western culture has not served men very well.
Because there is no need for that masculine provider in the traditional sense. You know, if we talk about DNA, there's like, if we're being confined to, let's say, the average cubicle, then there's not that sense of achievement, of maybe of conquering, or of having that, even like we can translate, you know, an embodied feeling of purpose into like something we're creating, you know, a business online maybe. But unless unless we have the awareness of it's actually been driven by something deeper, which is a survival role, which is what's allowed us to get to this point, you know, and the loss of that, and it's almost like that whole part of being, let's say a man has been made obsolete because we don't have to hunt. We don't have to do any of that. We just, you know, if we want, sit at home and get our government check every month if we really wanted, you know? So it's like recognizing that, once again, like we said, there's no, let's say, strong forefront role models of like, this is a good thing to aim for. You know what I mean? And I think for good reason as well, because obviously, you know, the way that things are set up, particularly now with the TikTok age and stuff, it's like we are basically supporting people who are like more in these polarized roles, or fulfilling some kind of like, it's like if you have the car, or you're seen as some kind of, you got 2 million followers, then you've made it, and that's our idol, and that's what we will adopt, the values of that person, instead of like these values which may not be as flashy, but will leave someone feeling much more fulfilled at their core. I believe that they wouldn't even need to ever go and do that shit, because it's not going to do it. And imagine the people in that car, or with 2 million followers, if it's from the wrong place, then they're probably not going to feel very good either.
Are they actually happy? Are they fulfilled? Do they feel the actual, especially the men, do they feel like their vision is being achieved brick by brick and with commitment and discipline? I don't know. I've met a lot of millionaires who are miserable.
Yeah. And that's the promise of society, which is that when you do this, then you will have that deep yearning inside of you will finally be complete. Whether it's from, you know, I don't feel worthy or enough because of how my parents showed up when I was a kid, or the unmet needs I had, and then being able to target that and say, like, when you achieve this, then you'll be whole, then you'll be enough.
Right.
And it's never going to happen, you know, unfortunately. But that is what I'm seeing, at least with some of the people who roll up my doorstep, is that at least people start to realize, like, they get to the end of the rainbow, the yellow brick road, to realize that there's no fucking Wizard of Oz, you know? It's like, all right, what now? And then it's like, well, no, go inward. Like, start to come back to these core principles, the first principles, and maybe take like 35 of Tate's 50 tenets, you know, his rules, and like being able to come back to that like essence of who we are, you know, as in this case men, but as humans as well. We talked about, you know, heritage as well, like finding these roots within us in our DNA, recognizing that the only reason why we're here is because they served a purpose to get us to this point, and reintroducing them as a new technology into our day-to-day lives in order to, actually finally feel that deep wholeness that we want to feel.
Yeah, I love it. The future is ancient. Like we're making a full circle and reintegrating the best parts of the past right now. And that's actually key to what's happening on the planet. Pure progress for progress's sake, and the technocracy and the worship of AI and all these false idols. You know, this is repeated. It's in the fucking Bible. It's in all these texts.
Yeah.
Like it's in the Gita. It's in the Vedas. This stuff's repeating.
Yeah.
History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And that's, you know, that's kind of where we're at, is if we don't revivify some of these core first principle level values and just try to wing it, or even worse, think we know better and we can just make up our own rules. There's no such thing as gender. There's no such thing, you know, it's just look at the people who most promote that and ask yourself, if you had to live every part of their life, would you want to live as they're living? I mean, most people, it's pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
This isn't rocket science.
No. You were saying there the history rhymes, and I think this could be a good opportunity for a little freestyle.
Let's go.
On the topic of what we just talked about, which is like bringing back the old, you know, and integrating that.
Yes. Reunification. Ancestral revival. That's a new vibration. We're bringing back the best from the past. But in the future, man, we can make it last. Put it on your iPhone. You can stream it. Turn it into a reel. You ain't got to go for green only. Profit ain't the way unless you got a prophecy. Then you got something to say, because we're bringing back ancestral revival. We're bringing back all the best, not just survival. We came to thrive. We came to feel the vibe. We came to have masculine and feminine in one side. Unity in the tribe. Peace for my brothers and sisters, the little ones. They're gonna teach us so much. We need to clear the trauma. It's a lot. But that's cool because we got all the tools. DNA code, dude, it told you what to do. If you would just listen, get off your high horse and soapbox, maybe begin to see that the anomaly is that the progress for progress' sake is whack.
Ooh,
Hey.
we're bringing back the old and making it brand new. So if you're jumping on board with us, we gon' get to that new history soon. Bringing back the old, we're gonna make it all brand new. And if you like what you're hearing, then just keep on listening, cause we're gonna write this story real new, yeah.
You got a second verse?
Yeah. When I look at myself, look at my life, I take it off the top shelf, put my ego back down. Because I realize humility is what I'm gonna realize. I looked through my own past, my relationships that didn't last. I could know that I could put them all on blast. Polarity is the best.
Yeah.
And that's the rest.
Bringing back the old to new, yeah. We're gonna sing this ancestral polarity tune, yeah. Mix it up right now and bring it all back to you, yeah. I said Kevin P in the studio, bringing that all back to new, yeah.
Let's go.
Nice.
Busting it out.
Yeah, we planned that, didn't we? That was so planned.
Is this a thing you do in most episodes?
No, I've never done that. I did.
Wow.
We did an episode with Danny where we did a few of the songs from the musical, and we made up a Yellow Pages song. But that was that's the first time like that.
I feel like this should be a new segment.
Yeah, this should be like its own album, maybe. New paradigm rap. I like it.
It's great.
Conscious rap.
or crap, as I like to call it.
Crap.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to feel like how do we even follow that up? Maybe we should just check out.
It's a good ending point. I think we covered most of the topics. I mean, ultimately, like the theme of what we were talking about is very pragmatic. It's actually about what works. Like, especially in a relationship, if you're not well fucked, emotionally open, dialed in, healthy, vital, hormonally like strong, fertile, ecstatic, like you need to really question what's going on. Like, do you want to take health advice from sick, pale, obese people? Do you want to take relationship advice from bitter, resentful, divorced people? And it doesn't mean anyone has it figured out and perfect. There's no such thing as a fairy tale relationship, twin flame, soulmate. There's always shit. How you deal with conflict is actually the most key thing. But there are laws in nature and in the human body. And it's pretty clear once you get into this work, to me, that you will disobey those laws at your own peril. You can learn the rules, as Picasso said, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. Once you've mastered the basic idea of masculine feminine dynamics, yeah, you can go nuts and go into non-monogamy or go into like all these alternative styles. But a lot of people put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And they wonder why it's a shit
Get
show.
your times tables down first, 8 times 8, instead of trying to do complex algebra,
Yeah.
because that's what it becomes when you're dealing with different moving parts,
Yeah.
I realized we have an unclosed loop. I said there was a part B to my earlier question.
That's right.
So let's we'll just slot that in before our grand finale. So I asked you about what was the for you the blueprint of that new alpha, and we talked about the traditional masculine principles, but without the over the top chauvinistic kind of toxic male, or what people might consider toxic male, the emotional regulation, the attunement to the feminine. So from your experience, again, I think you're not a woman. I'm pretty sure you're not a woman. From your experience of working with women, okay, not as a woman, just prefacing that again, what could be some kind of, through the lens of a man, principles or an archetype that women could set their North Star towards as the optimal thing that will allow them to flourish in all areas of life?
Yeah, this is a great question. I was going to make the joke. I think South Park just did it, where it's like, actually, I'd like to take this opportunity, Pete, to reveal that I am a woman. And I identify, it's just like, that's like that, as comedic as that is, that's like not, that's just seen as, oh, another one. Like nowadays, it's like, oh, really?
Yeah,
cool.
just flipping
Congrats.
a light switch, yeah.
It's like, wait, what? What the fuck? Was this a Twilight Zone episode? Anyway, yeah, for the feminine, it's very similar but different in important ways. For the feminine, the North Star, so to speak, is through embodiment. It's through her ability to be, maiden, mother, muse, oracle. And that's going to come through the healthy but vibrant and full-on expression of her emotion and her feeling and her intuition. And so this takes many forms. In the bedroom, obviously, if a woman's dealing with shame, full sexual expression and erotic energy is going to make her whole life better, obviously. But in the business world, the feminine is really good at different things than the masculine. And so women that are trying to embody masculine traits in the corporate, creative world, business world, they can do it. They can become really successful. I've worked with women coaching that were millionaires and crushing it. But behind closed doors, it's always the same story. Oh, I just wish I could surrender more. I wish I could be in my flow more.
There's no good men.
Yeah, there's no good men out there. No man can handle me. I do blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, that's a story. That's true as long as you believe it. And then, with multiple of them, the happy ending is they did meet a man who they felt fucking aligned with. They didn't quit their job and become a stay-at-home mom. They kept working. But from a more receptive place, from a more... Surrender doesn't mean weak or like, it actually takes amazing power to surrender.
Totally.
To actually give over control in certain areas at certain times with trust and devotion. A feminine North Star is devotion. Think about the most powerful, like if the new Avatar movie, I don't know if you've seen it.
Haven't seen it.
It's quite dope. I enjoyed it.
A lot of people tell me they cried. I'm like, you're not selling this to me.
It's potent medicine if you're a tribal person or you're an
Cool.
earth lover. Anyway, the women in that movie like really embody this. Like the women Navi or whatever. It's like, think about the most powerful woman. She's a badass. She's assertive. She can still be like, she doesn't take shit, but she's so devotional. She's so receptive and she's so nurturing and giving. Like she's literally a life force beacon to children, not even just her own, but in the village, and to the masculine. Like her partner can really rely on her. It's like, this woman's got my fucking back. And like, I like want to love her even more because she's so devotional. That's the secret sauce of the feminine. And unfortunately that's been demonized because you got to be a strong, independent woman who don't need no man. And those women that buy into that story, in my experience, and again, I get a front row seat because I've been coaching this kind of stuff for like over 7 years now. Doesn't work. It rarely works. There are edge cases where the woman actually enjoys being in the masculine energetic and the man enjoys the feminine. I have seen it. So it does exist.
Totally.
It's the exception. It's not the rule.
Yeah. And I think it's important there to recognize what was I going to say? I've totally lost my train of thought.
All good.
Shit happens.
It'll return.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be. If someone wants to find out more about you and all that you do, how might they do that?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, have a Substack, all the things. Just search my name, Kevin Orosz, Orosz. That.com, at Kevin J. Orosz on Instagram is probably the best way to start. And I have a group also. It's a free group on Facebook called the Polarity Dojo, which is closed, but it's free to, you apply to get in. And that's a great place to, in real time, see this stuff play out, where we do polls, we do questions, we have content and shares from men and women from all varieties and types, just sharing about, how to be successful in dating, sexuality, intimacy, and relationships. And we're here for what works, and we're here for respectful conversations about it that are also vulnerable.
Yeah. Sorry, what I was going to say before is I feel that swing from like, if maybe someone's been in a disempowered situation in the past to then find that empowerment, it takes that pendulum swing to then eventually find that center point. And I think that's something we can take from, like, for ourselves in all areas of life, to allow the pendulum swing, but not let it be this is the only way now. It sounds like that kind of group would be the good place to see more of these laws and these principles in action in a way that's not so, because if we're not consciously educating ourselves on these things, then we're just reacting to what we're fed. And as we know, that hasn't been going so well. So Polarity Dojo sounds like a good place to go hang out.
It is a dojo too. We push back. There's, disagreements. There's, it's not just a happy fun time. Like there's a lot of kind of gnarly stuff that gets shared. What I've found is like, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot. Like there's I have a whole series of recorded masterclasses and interviews that break things down letter by letter. The problem is, and this is true for most of life, especially for relationships, people need to hear it in a way that they can receive and lands. And it may not be with the language that I'm using or you're using or someone else is using. So until you hear it that way, and more importantly, until you put it into practice, once you've heard it and be like, I'll try that the next date I go on, or I'll try this with my wife or husband. It'll just seem like new age psychobabble. And that's fine.
I think we need to write a song.
That would be
you
cool.
kind of did, but like a polarity song.
That would be great. And I think that would be a hit. People would geek out on that.
Totally. Watch this space, guys. Polarity song coming soon.
It should definitely be in the musical as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm cooking up something. Don't worry. We got a new project that's kind of on that topic. So
imagine a musical just about dating and like conscious relating. That would be dope.
I'm not going to say I haven't started something like that.
Okay.
Kev, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Pete, it's a pleasure, brother.
You.